Hey everybody, MrAyrit here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we've got a headphone review that's one of the ones that I've been meaning to get to for a long time. This is the LCD2C, and obviously this is one of Audeze's kind of like entry level, to get into their normal size planar headphones. I've had the opportunity to listen to a few Audeze headphones, and I did own the LCD2 Pre-Fazors for quite a while, and I actually really love those headphones. So I've always kind of wondered if the LCD2C was similar to those or not, and I guess just if I would end up liking them for the price. Now I bought mine for $400 or $450 used. I can't remember which, but these, I think that's a pretty normal, somewhere around there is a pretty average used price. These were in really, really good shape. So let's dig into kind of the build of these. I don't have the original package, so we won't cover that. I do have the original cable though, so we'll take a look at that. And of course, we'll dig into sound, and really I'm going to do some comparing with the Edition XS from Hi-Fi Man, because I think that's one that I have on hand, and I think that's one that a lot of people would maybe look at if you're getting, a planar headphone in the $400-ish range. Do you do Edition XS or do you do LCD2C? And we'll kind of talk about that as we go along. As always, if you find these useful, I appreciate it if you like and subscribe, those types of things. And there is a Patreon link down below if you'd like to support in that way. Let's dig into these headphones. Now, if you've ever used an Audeze headphone, this is really pretty much just like standard Audeze build, I would say, as far as I can tell, which is to say it's all pretty much metal. I believe these are the protein headband, protein pads, I think. The big difference with the LCD2C compared to some of those other Audeze models is it's not a wood cup, right? It's just a metal, like an aluminum cup here, I believe, as far as just that little housing goes right there. They are quite large as far as just like the size of the driver there, but really it's a pretty thin enclosure. You can see they've got some nice thick pads on them. I don't feel like these pads were actually as nice as the ones that were on my LCD2 Pre-Fazor. They seem like they're squished down a little bit, and when I put them on, I don't feel like there's as much room inside the pads. I don't know, they just don't feel quite as nice to me as far as that goes. So I thought that was interesting, because you'd think it would be improved over that LCD2 Pre-Fazor I had was, like maybe 12 years old or something like that. But this seems largely unchanged, and maybe, in my opinion, even a step down actually in comfort from that one. But I mean, maybe that's just the protein stuff. Maybe if I had the real pads on there, real leather pads, it would be fine. The suspension strap, is fine. This is classic Audeze as far as the yokes and suspension strap and headband goes. This is just a regular metal one. You can get carbon fiber ones and things like that if you want to spend some more dough on them. Again, comfort for me for these, it's not horrible, but it's not great either. I find the Edition XS, while I feel like this is like a more solid headphone, like the materials are better on it, I feel like just using and wearing the Edition XS is personally more comfortable for me though. These are, they're not too heavy, they're on the heavier side. They definitely weigh more than the XS does, but it's really kind of negligible when you start getting into these large headphones, you know what I mean? But it carries its weight fine, okay? Let's talk about the cable real quick here. Cable is decent. It's a braided cable. It's quite plasticky. It means it doesn't tangle too bad, but it also doesn't feel like, it's just not real nice to interact with, I don't think. Mine came with a 1/4 inch on it, and of course this is the standard, mini XLRs that go in Audeze, CMFs, things like that. Length is about 6 feet, what I feel is pretty much appropriate. I didn't have any issues with the cable. It just, like I said, I don't feel like it's great to interact with, but no real downsides to it though. It's okay. So let's start talking sound with the LCD2C. And honestly, I just don't really like it, if I'm being completely honest. When I was listening to it, I just thought that it had kind of a weird presentation to it, in that the mids seem pretty forward. but then they drop off like really, really quickly. And it was, I was listening to it a lot, and I was thinking about it, and I was trying to figure out how I would describe it. I'm going, man, the mids are really forward, but then I just feel like they kind of just drop off, and then the treble comes back really quickly, but then it falls again really fast. So it doesn't seem to have a lot of like extension up top, and the transition between the mids and the treble, I feel like there's a big drop there. And so I actually drew, I'm going to put a picture on the screen right now, because I actually drew what I thought the frequency response was doing, and then I went and looked up an actual graph, and yeah, it was exactly that. There is a big dip in like the upper mids treble, lower treble transition, and that just makes it for an odd kind of honky, shouty sound to the LCD2C that I did not like very much. And then when you talk about the treble, it's got some sparkle to it and stuff, but then I feel like it drops off again really fast, so it doesn't extend very well. So I thought just the Edition XS here, I feel like is a much smoother headphone as far as like the transition between mids to highs, and it just has a lot more information up top. It doesn't drop off the same way that the LCD2C does. It leaves it feeling kind of like forward and shouty, but then it just falls off and dies. It's really kind of an odd sound, I personally think. Bass wise, I was a little surprised about this one too, because you always hear Audeze and bass and they're kind of associated together, but I don't feel like the bass is really over accentuated or anything like that on the LCD2C. I thought the bass is pretty adequate. I think the bass extends fairly well and has some nice texture to it. I actually feel like the bass is stronger on the XS though, myself. So again, I think it's interesting that like when you hear about Audeze's, you hear people talking about bass and things like that, but for me, I don't know. I didn't think it didn't. It's fine, it's good. It just didn't stand out to me as anything like super special that they did. When we get into imaging and soundstage, again, I think this is kind of an interesting headphone for that. It definitely, rather than going for like a super accurate presentation, I feel like much more so it's doing like a holographic-y type of thing. And again, I just didn't find it to be super smooth or linear, or it's just kind of all over the board, I thought. And it's not a very big soundstage either. It's much smaller than the XS, and again, the XS, I just feel like it's a smoother, more precise, more consistent image to it, where I feel like the Audeze it's kind of playing with things a little bit and doing its own thing. It's not necessarily unenjoyable, it's just it doesn't seem super accurate to me either. So I don't know, man. I think the Audeze LCD2C, I think it's kind of a tough sell personally. At least at this point in time. You have some really, really strong competition around the $400 mark with things like the Edition XS, which I thought was just all around for me a better headphone as far as just linearity and frequency response and extension on both ends and just natural timbre. I thought the LCD2C, like, I've never thought that planars in general had that, sometimes they're kind of associated with having like a plasticky timbre, and I never really found that to be super true, but I definitely kind of feel that way about the LCD2C. It sounds kind of like brittle or plasticky. I don't know exactly what it is. Again, I think it's to do with some of those dips in the frequency response that just make it a little bit wonky for me. So, I mean, Edition XS, I think it would be my preference, definitely. The Focal Elex, it's not a planar, but I think probably for most people, it would be an easier listen and just a more well-rounded experience than the LCD2C. So for me, I'm just going to turn around and sell these guys. I know some people say, like, if you EQ them, like, they're made to be EQ'd and you can EQ them and they'll be good. But I'm not really an EQ person, so I think it should sound pretty decent just as it is, and I don't feel like it's there personally. So I don't know. It's hard for me to recommend it. The Pre-Fazor, it's been a long time since I've heard that headphone, but I just love that thing. And I feel like this kind of doesn't have that magic in it that the Pre-Fazor did. So if I was looking for an Audeze in the, around the $500 mark, I would look for the Pre-Fazor myself, is how I would recommend it. But you know what? There's lots of these out there. They're buying and selling used all the time, so I'm sure you could pick one up if you want to try it, and then probably do a catch and release like I am and not really lose much money. Matter of fact, you can even buy this one for me if you want. So it's going to be going up for sale, but I usually give my patrons the first crack at headphones if I'm selling them. But, so again, check that out down below. If you want more headphone reviews, things like that, feel free to subscribe to the channel. And as always, I thank you for your time. Alternate comments and opinions down below, questions, all that stuff. And then, of course, I hope to see you in the next one. So thanks again. I'll see you later.